You hear me?
Elaine, I can hear you and I can see you.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. Thank you so much for being here. You are an amazing astrologer. For all my people that watch this and people who love all things weird and all things coincidental and all things spooky, a lot of
Yep.
them will also love all things astrology, right? So I know you as Blue Moon Astrology,
Yes.
and I don't say your surname in case I mispronounce it. How do you say your surname?
Kalantarian. It's Armenian. I'm not Armenian, my husband is. So, yes.
You married into that exotic name.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's
And are
very
you
kind of
related?
you.
And you're a Blake. Are you related to the famous Blake William?
Strangely enough, well, there's another William that I'm related to. Have you heard of William Pitt? William Pitt was the youngest Prime Minister of England.
Aha. And you're related to him.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
I've got a really spooky coincidence about that actually. I
Okay.
found a long lost cousin because of my name, because a guy that I'd never met before on Facebook put on his little Facebook page, or I've written a book for anyone that's interested in. I thought, oh yeah, I'm interested, and he sent me a free copy, and then it didn't get to me by the post because somebody delivered it to the wrong house. Then he sent me another copy, and I was reading it. I thought, well, he's made all this effort, I better read it now. And it's a great big thick book. So I was reading all through it, and on page 66, which is the year I was born, there was this little notice that he was related to William Pitt, Prime Minister of England. And I was like, I'm related to William Pitt, Prime Minister of England. Turns out our grannies were sisters. Our
Oh, wow.
grannies were
Yeah,
sisters.
that's cool. That's cool.
It's
It's great.
unbelievable.
It is. It really is. When you start to think about it, and I've read most of your book,
Thank
and
you
it's
so
such a
much.
great, and it's fun to read. I like all your stories, and you have some pretty remarkable stories. And I think that it's such a great reminder of the need to pay attention, that when something happens like that, it really, I think it is message from whatever it is, some greater force at play in this universe. We don't know, but it's a time to pay attention, and they usually are connected with something significant happening, entering your life, or some pattern. The positive ones are one thing, but there's also these negative um, coincidences, synchronicities that are equally important to pay attention to. And I feel like the times when I've had those in my life, and I have some examples of those to
Yes,
share.
please.
When we
Go
get to
on.
that point,
Should we start there? Go
it's
on.
okay, well, sure. Well, I think that they're an indication that you're heading the wrong way, and that you have a great story about that. I mean, really dramatic in your book about, going to that job interview. That's just so
Oh
wild.
no.
And so tied in with the early trauma of your brother, so it's just really something. But
Um,
I think I was a teacher for a while. I started with early childhood education. I worked with preschool age kids. And overall I worked for 11 years. That's a number that pops up a lot in my life. And 111, because you asked that. And so 11 years I taught, and on my way. So I worked in early childhood, and then I got my teaching credential and finished that, and then taught in the public schools at first and second grade, which are 6 and 7 year olds, essentially 8 year olds, that age. But on my way to student teaching, you have two assignments in America for the preparation for finishing your credential. And you are assigned in a classroom to work with a teacher. And so you have two different grade level assignments. My first one was fifth grade. It was great. I had a great teacher, wonderful. My second assignment was third grade, and it was the most god awful school. And the teacher, they were just a mess, just a mess. And they were really weird people too. A lot of passive aggressive behavior, and really, really strange. But anyway, what happened was I went out after a day of teaching and could not find my car. It had been stolen out of the parking lot. And it was missing for about a month, and they found it. It had been joy-ridden and had been damaged, but it wasn't total. And so we had to fix it and get it back, and the insurance paid for it and everything. But that was one thing. So, and then I ended up leaving that assignment and having to start over again because it was such a wacko and I wasn't learning, and it was just a mess. So anyway, so I got out of that. It set me back from getting my credential because I had to start over again the next semester. So I got reassigned to a first grade classroom, wonderful teacher, wonderful school. It was a great experience. But one morning on the way there, I'm stopped at a stoplight and wham, I'm slammed into in the back and got horrible whiplash. And, the car was damaged. Couple of teenage boys, and he claimed his foot got stuck under the accelerator. And they were driving to school. They were in high school. And anyway, I was at a complete stop and they were going really fast. And so it was a really bad accident.
This story of people having these accidents, this is exactly like a near-death experience story. When people often get hit when they're at traffic lights, it usually sometimes leads to much worse than. So you're saying you walked away from that and you weren't
Right.
hospitalized and you weren't near dead,
Oh,
badly whiplashed.
just horrid whiplash. But I went to the chiropractor and it was fine after that. But horrible migraine headache. I went on the car I could drive, and I went on to the school and told, and the teacher was like, and I just started, she said, something's wrong. And I told her what had happened. And I said, I think I'll be fine. But then I started to get this awful headache. So I had to go home. And so anyway, so that was that. It was like, okay, well, what else is going to happen that's alerting me that I really shouldn't be doing this,
Did you feel at the time, hold on, what's happening? Maybe I should reevaluate my steps.
Well, I can be so stubborn and fixed.
So that's a no.
In my nature, I had already invested, I had already invested so much energy to get to this in education and work experience. I just thought, oh, well, this is just a fluke, but the whole time, I mean, I had some awesome experiences as a teacher, of course, and it's a really great thing. And I always wanted to do something that mattered, that was giving back, and it was fulfilling, and it is that. But the conditions of the schools and the educational system, and particularly here in America, and this was back in the late 80s, when I was doing this, mid to late 80s. And already it was just being dismantled in a mess, and families falling apart here because.
I can't imagine you were old enough in the 80s. You don't look old enough. Elaine, are you one of these people that look eternally youthful? Are you just one of these people everyone said, what? You were doing what in the 80s? You were supposed to be at school in the 80s. What are you talking about? Oh my goodness. Must be something you're
Well,
eating. We want to know what you're eating at the end, okay?
I'm 64. I'll be 65 in Medicare
Wow.
age. But thank you. Yeah, I was born in 1959. So November,
So all the
Scorpio.
planets aligned and you arrived. Have you done the chart with your husband? Have you looked at the planets compared to the both of you? Was it obvious why you would have met at the time you met
Well, I have a really good story about meeting my husband.
before you
And
met him?
yeah, met him before I met him.
I
And we
love
were
that.
on this,
Go
thing,
on. Where
trajectory.
should we start? Well, quite big
Yeah.
question, first of all. Do you believe in God?
Um, not as in the religious sense. I grew up going to church, Christian church. My family were religious. I have ministers in my family tree, and but they weren't like, you've got to do this, kind of thing. They were very good about that. And left it up to me to decide, which was good. They were very committed to their own beliefs and serious about it, but I always felt like I could make my own decision, which is good. Um, I don't know. I mean, I think I tend to be more of there's some greater force at play. And it's not like this personal God kind of being, that is this, father figure. I just can't, that just doesn't seem right to me personally. And if it, I think everybody has their own personal beliefs, and that's the way it should be.
And the
What
truth is,
rings
none of
true.
us know. None of us know.
Yeah, it's the big mystery. What happens to us after we die, and I do believe that we are made of spirit and this physical self too. We're dual. We're human beings, there's a
Exactly. We're
good term.
being. We all
We
think we're
have
doing
being
human
part.
doings. We think we're human doings. No, doing
Yeah,
things.
you
We're not. We're
are
being.
thinking, human thinking, right? But yes, doing always too much of that and not enough being for sure. Um,
Okay, so let's just go back to then the husband and the way that you met him before you met him, and then we'll
yeah,
go back and work through our questions. Because
sure.
dear viewers, I've sent Elaine a list of questions before we started so that she'd have some idea of what I was going to ask her. So I'm just sort of trying to make this flow, like let you flow and talk and tick off some of the questions, and then we'll go back and because you're a teacher, so you know how to do this better than me, right?
Oh,
I'm
I don't
learning from you now. I realize this. Okay, so
Yeah.
we
Well,
sometimes
there's a reason why I'm a writer because it's very easy to get sort of like thrown off on a trajectory and, tangent and yeah. Yeah. So meeting my husband before I met him. Um, I met my husband in March of 1986, and I had been out of a relationship for a little bit, and I had just had a couple of difficult breakups. And so I wasn't really looking for anybody. I really didn't want that. Don't you hear that all the time, right? And a friend of mine was working with my husband, and she kept saying, "Oh, Elaine, you would really like this guy. He's this, that, and the other." And she described him and all this. And I just said, nah. And I really, I'm not interested. I don't want to. And she kept after me. She just kept after me. And so finally I said, okay, okay, okay. And we scheduled this, a blind date actually. And so we went out to dinner, and we all four knew each other, except I didn't know Michael. Michael worked with my friend Pat and her boyfriend at the time too. And so they all knew each other, but I didn't know Michael. I knew Pat and her boyfriend. So anyway, so we all went out to dinner, and I really liked him. And so we hit it off. And so a number of things happened. I also have a very interesting paranormal experience with Michael too that happened later that year. Um, he was going through his Saturn return, so it was a big year for him. And I'm a couple years younger, so I was moving into mine as well. Well, I'm actually 3.5 to be exact years younger. But so he was nearing 30, and he was 29 when I met him, which is the Saturn return year. So we had a really good experience. Years later, after we moved in together and we had been living together for probably a couple of years, we were watching Hannah and her sisters. It came on TV back in the days of no streaming, and you watched what was
you
on
had to be
TV.
there. You had to be on the sofa or you weren't
So it
watching
just
it.
happened to come on.
Mm.
And so we were watching it, and we're like, yeah, this is a really good Woody Allen movie. It's one of his best, and I said, I saw it in the theater. And he said, I saw it in the theater too. He said, as a matter of fact, a weird thing happened when we were driving there, and we were kind of late. And I said, I was kind of late showing up too. And because we decided at the last minute, a friend of mine and I, that we'd go see the movie. And so he said, yeah, there was a van on fire at the freeway off ramp on the way there. I said, what? I was at the same thing. And so we said, what date, what time? It was like, we couldn't exactly remember, but it's like, it was the same place. The other thing is, I remember my husband lived in Alaska for a long time, and we were in Southern California. Southern California, like in Newport Beach area, Costa Mesa, nobody wears flannel there. It's like, surfer, t-shirts, all those casual clothes. Nobody wears. It was winter, so it was cool. But there's a whole bunch of guys. There were about 3 or 4 guys that were behind us in line. So, and they were talking and chatting and laughing, and they were memorable to me for some reason. First of all, it was kind of the flannel stood out. Southern California. But, I remembered them, which is kind of strange, and it was him. He was one of the guys. And he was with his friends. He remembers, yeah, we probably did have flannel on because that's all we wore, and they were all down from Alaska visiting family for the
It's
holidays,
unbelievable, isn't it? But the thing is with cinema, when you were in the cinema and you noticed the van on fire, so you know it was the same time and you were late. Now, because you were late, you were rushing into the cinema and you weren't paying attention to who was around you. Because if you'd been paying attention, you might have realized that he was in front of you buying tickets.
Yeah, yeah, and we were all in line. There was a pretty slow line going in, and so when we got in the theater, and then we were behind them, and they were in front of us in the theater, and so yeah, and so he said, yeah, I was with, and I said, I remember these tall guys, and my husband's tall, and his friends were tall, and so about my
Unbelievable,
age.
isn't it? But you wouldn't have thought to speak to him.
No, no, not at all. No, because we were, going in, and I was with my friend, and we were talking. He was talking with his friends, but it was just
Exactly.
an
Not in the
amazing thing.
moment. When you think about it, you're busy talking. What are you talking about? Something happened yesterday. You're not right there in the moment, are you? But wow,
Yeah.
that's lovely. I love
Yeah.
that. I bet you both were. Did you both feel a bit sort of weirded out by that idea that your paths nearly
Well,
crossed paths
yeah,
several times?
it was really interesting. And this was throughout that time when my friend Pat kept saying, you got to meet this guy, you got to meet this guy. It was the same time. It was just before we met.
Did you tell Pat?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We were still, I have lost contact with her. I'm not sure where she is anymore,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah.
That's amazing.
But
Thank you for that.
but but when we found out, I was still, and I told her, it was like, yeah, it was really very
It's
interesting.
amazing. It really is. It is the sort of thing that only happens hardly, well, just hardly ever. When it happens, everyone in the world knows about it. You know, like those photos where you see somebody on the beach taking a photo and there's a kid behind them, and then 30 years later they get married. You know, it's that, isn't it? It's so out
It's
there
right. I know.
that
And
it's
we don't
special.
get, if we hadn't happened to be watching the movie, and if there hadn't been that dramatic van on fire with his hood up, I wouldn't have made the connection. So
No,
it was like tick tick and all,
exactly.
and then the years later when it's like, wow, that's pretty remarkable. And Southern California is huge, there's a huge amount of people. It's not a small place. So it was really unusual for
That's it.
us to have
You were meant
even,
to meet. So did you feel like you were meant to meet?
yeah, yeah, I do definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And we've been married since 1992. We moved in together in 1987. So January of 1987. So we've been together for a long
That's
time. And
amazing, isn't it? It's just lovely. It's just lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
yeah, and I've also had like a really interesting experience with a dog that we had that recently died about a
Oh,
year ago.
what was his
And
name? What was the dog
Buddy,
called? Buddy.
Buddy. And we live in a place where we're rural, and it's quite a drive to get to the grocery store. So it's an outing. Lists, and you actually look at the lists when you're in the grocery store, because it's a drive. And so it's about an hour to get to the town where we can do all of our shopping. So I was with my daughter who was homeschooling that year. She was 12. And we had been talking about getting a dog for her, and as a homeschool project to raise the dog and all. But we hadn't really seriously planned anything. So I have a carload full of groceries. You have to put things in cooler because it's an hour drive, things that, can't defrost. And so I've got a carload full of groceries and we're together. We need to get home and make dinner. And I'm driving past the road that goes to the animal shelter, and kapow, in my head from nowhere said, go to the shelter. And it wasn't like I heard the voice. It was like this compelling need all of a sudden, go to the shelter. So I sometimes have those experiences, and unfortunately, sometimes I ignore them. But this time I
At
did
your
not.
peril. Usually, if you ignore that, it's that to your detriment, isn't it? If something bad
I
happens if you
think
ignore
I,
it.
I think so. I think about all the good things that I could have possibly have happened to me if I had paid attention, and I try to. Sometimes you just can't. You've got
No,
things you
busy.
got to
No,
do.
you
Um,
dismiss it, don't you? Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've learned not to, like, when I was younger, I would just say, oh, that's kind of crazy. What a crazy thought. Yeah, we all have kind of crazy thoughts sometimes, but when they're really, really strong, and that one was the strongest, one of the strongest sort of psychic hits or whatever you
And
want to call it.
it comes with a hunch. Did it feel like a hunch,
It
like an
is.
action? You've got to take
There
action.
is, right. There's a certainty. There's a, like, you've
Got
got to do
drive, a
this.
drive. It's a feeling, isn't it? It's a drive. Mm.
Yeah, it is. It's very strong. So in that instance, it was. So I turned the car around, went back, went in. We went in the shelter, and I said, do you have any puppies? And she gave me a funny look, and she said, I just put out a litter of puppies. Just put out a litter of puppies. And Buddy was among the litter. And so yeah, so and it was just, yeah, a
It was meant to
serendipity,
happen. It was
it's
so
all
meant to happen.
um,
I had a similar
yeah,
story with a half Persian cat. I said to my son was 3 at the time, and I said to his dad, I think we should get him a kitten. I think we should get him a cat. I had no intention of getting a cat, no intention of getting a kitten. And there in the paper, as we were driving home, I was sitting in the back of the car with my son, and there was a little advert for a little half Persian cat that no one wanted from the Persian cat dealer because he'd been got by a cat that wasn't Persian, so he was half Persian, and he was the most beautiful cat in the world. You would never. And we went and picked him up and took him home. But just at that
neat.
moment, the thought crossed my mind, and there was an advert in the paper. It's the same thing. You feel like animals come to you as part of your soul family. That's how I see it. I see that Buddy was sort of reeling you in because you could have gone to the shops at any time. It took you an hour to get there, right? So you could have gone there the next day, the day before. It was an
That's
outing. It was going to take you 3 hours, probably. How long did it take? Best part of a day. Right at that moment, the woman's put the puppies out. If you'd gone another aisle, another couple of aisles in the shop, you'd done some clothes shopping as well. No, just at that moment, for her to say, I've just put
right.
some puppies out.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, and those puppies were really cute, and they were snatched up pretty quickly. And we just got the pick. We got the pick of the litter, which was really
He got the
nice.
pick of you, you mean? Sorry, Buddy reeled
Yeah,
you
and
in.
that is true, because when we walked up to the little cage where they were, and they had a little bed and they were all cuddled up together, he jumped out, and it was like this little kadoo jump
He,
over and to us. And
oh.
I looked at my daughter and I said, I think that's the one. That's the one. And yeah, and so we adopted him, and he was
Oh.
great. He was
Did you ever
great.
do his chart? Do you ever do astrology charts for animals?
Yes, I did. They didn't know his exact birthday, but he was born near Lammas, early August. So
Oh,
Leo, and he was very much a Leo doggy.
was
He
he?
was a Roman.
Was it
And
obvious to you when he was going to die from his chart?
no, no, and I am very reluctant, even a Scorpio me,
As
to do
dark as
death.
it can get, as dark as
Yeah.
it can get, you
And I
avoid
think
that. Mm.
And actually, it's really interesting what I have read and studied about death charts is it's usually Jupiter or Neptune that are significant transits to the chart. And in that is those are the transition planets, the breaking out of the bounds.
See, I always thought it was the third Saturn return. That's what, I thought because the Saturn return brings so many
Oh,
changes. So it made sense
well,
to me that the third
actually,
one would be.
right. People do often not make it to their their first Saturn return and second Saturn return as well.
Mm.
I think there's a re-upping that you need to do a recommitting to being here at the Saturn returns. I think that's part of the spiritual process of it,
Okay.
that I feel intuitively. But however, there is usually, if not most of the time, another significant connection with Jupiter or Neptune. And not, of course not, we don't all die at, or the third Saturn return would be around late 80s, around 90. They're every 29 years. So you go through the second Saturn return in around age 57,
It's me,
58.
that's me. Hello, here I am. Which is another
Yeah,
reason
that's
why,
right. That's
another
right.
thing,
That's
anyone out there that's listening to this that would like an amazing reading from Elaine, she offers astrology readings, and I will put a link underneath our little chat so people can contact you for a reading, because I've got some amazing words that Elaine has written for me, but of course it's copyright and I'm scared to read it because I don't want people stealing your words, because you have such a
oh,
beautiful
yeah.
way with words.
Well,
It's
thank
absolutely amazing
you.
to read. It's really lovely and healing, and I absolutely love reading the words that you've written, and all about
There,
the Saturn return
thank
as well. And I think, oh, if you had this in a book, then I'm sure people would love. So anything that you've got that you've already produced, let me know and send me links, and I will put it underneath this video if that's all.
Okay, very good.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Okay.
because Saturn return, yeah, the first and second are significant always for everybody. You hear that all the time. Oh, at 29, I met my wife, or I finished my college education and started my career. And there are significant times in our lives. And then the second Saturn return is the beginning of your elder stage, which is what I was talking about in the second Saturn return. And it's a totally different, you're
Ball
stepping into
game,
a
different ball
different
game.
part of your life. Absolutely. So
How do
we're
you
supposed
feel?
to be
Sorry,
elders.
we are. And people don't realize because of how youthful you look. People are shocked when you tell them that you're in that phase. This is the trouble. People behaving as if
That's,
you're still, yeah, you can go out for 24 hours a day and work, be fine next day. No, you need a little bit more rest than that. How do you
yeah.
feel about the Mercury retrograde situation? Do you believe that that has an influence?
Oh yeah, I totally. Yeah, you definitely see more of those Mercury retrograde problems. The things that Mercury, under the auspices of Mercury, what Mercury rules, which is connections, communication, electronics, all which are connective. Everything's connected. It's a circuit. So those kind of things can go haywire much more readily. Cars, transportation, just problems if you're going on a trip, miscommunications, all of these things tend to really definitely. And I've been watching that for many, many years, and they really do. And for you personally, if that retrograde intersects with your chart in a powerful way. And the last few that we've had have been also folded in with eclipses, which have made them even harder. So it's
Really?
really sort of turbocharged the effects of the eclipse, because the eclipses are wild card, and the energy is like really kind of swirling around, and it's a time of change and upheaval. When
Do you,
Mercury is connected to that, Mercury retrograde, the two together can make for very difficult, it's particularly difficult. So people have, they have, car breakdowns, and, things like
all sorts.
miscommunications, all kinds of stuff happen.
Do you think that's worse for people who are born under the sign of Virgo and Gemini because of the Mercury ruler?
Well, yes, because they're Mercury attuned. So what the ruler of our planet, our sun, the planet that rules our sun, depending on the sign that it's in, we are particularly sensitive to the motions of that planet, to its movements. And so it's really important to pay attention to that. And so you're particularly attuned to that planet. And so, yeah, I think so. That doesn't mean necessarily that bad things happen. With anything, there are positives and there are challenges. But people that are Mercury or Virgo are attuned to Mercury for sure.
So do you think so?
Yeah.
And
And I have Mercury retrograde natally. I
mm,
have Mercury in Sagittarius. And I was born during the retrograde. The interesting thing about Mercury retrograde natally is the amount of people that become writers that have Mercury retrograde.
Really?
And there's a reason, and it's, I think largely it's because the mind is so disorganized. I mean, really, I mean, it's like you want to, you're kind of drawn to write, to sort everything out and think things through and get some clarity, because your mind is kind of like, especially in Sagittarius, which is very open and wants to fly off on all these different tangents, and it's like, ooh, that's an interesting thought. Let's go there. Oh, what about this? And you're just drawn all over the place. And so getting your thoughts together and clear so that you can sort it out for yourself, but as well as communicate, can be a challenge. We tend to have a little more trouble communicating than writing, and that is like we're not as spontaneous. People that have Mercury retrograde tend to be, they like to contemplate things. They like to think things through ahead of time. That's why it was really nice for you to send me the questions ahead of time. I'm not so good spur of the moment,
You're doing really well now. You're doing really well. You're doing really well now
Well,
because this is stuff that you know, isn't it? You know this.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's fun to talk to you.
Thank you. I
And
was
now,
just thinking about all the.
I meant to ask you, it's Tamison, right? I said it correctly. Okay, good.
Thank you. You did, yeah. But you can call me Tammy because that does make
Tammy.
life easier for people. And
Great.
strangely, and this is a strange thing that's happened, people call me Mandy. Often, when people have ever got my name wrong in public, they call me Mandy. I'm like, and I answer to it now because I know that somehow the name Tammy gets transposed up here and comes out as Mandy for people.
That's interesting.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
I get called Eileen instead of Elaine, but that makes
That's sort
sense.
of, well, it does a
Close.
bit, but not really.
Or Ellen too. But Elaine is a form of Helen. So Ellen makes sense.
Oh, okay. So that was one of my questions about significant names for you. Have you
Yes,
have you had that in your
yes.
life?
I do have an interesting name story of
Mm.
my name being changed by my mother when I was 2 years old.
Oh,
And that being an astrological correspondence, I was born Mary. Mary's my birth name. And when I was 2 years old, my mom said, she's not a Mary. And Elaine was my second name. And so she said, we're going to start calling her Elaine because that seems to fit her better. Well, coincidentally, that year, my progressed sun, which is a way in which we've is a forecasting method, and the progressed sun changes signs well, depending on when you were born. I was born at the very end of Scorpio, so when I was 2, my progressed sun moved into Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is a fire sign. It's lighter, much, much lighter. Mary is kind of a Scorpio name. Elaine means light, and it's much more of a
oh,
Sagittarian name. I knew that story because my mom told me that when we were growing up, that you're Mary, but we just felt like Elaine was better for you when you were 2. And I'm so glad you said when you were 2, because later on when I was an astrologer and I started you learn by looking at your own alignments throughout your life, and okay, this was a significant year. What was going on then? It was like, oh wow, it is a really interesting seemingly mechanism for explaining a lot of these kind of correspondences that happen.
this is why I
The
find it
alphabet
so
of love.
bizarre. I find it so bizarre, but it's like a cosmic clock, isn't it?
It
Really
really
is.
is. It really is. And the forecasting charts, which have been used for men, they're very old, really do connect with significant changes in our lives. And the progressed sun, it's 1 degree per year, so it stays in a sign for 30 years.
Mm,
So these are like almost like Saturn cycles.
okay.
It'll, depending on when you were born, like I was born at the very tail end of Scorpio, so I only had 2 more years left, progression wise, and that's why I had an early shift. And then it was 30 years of Sagittarius, my first I was 32, and then I married my husband when I was 32, when it shifted into Capricorn, the sign of home, family, tradition.
Commitment.
Yeah,
Obviously, you don't have it in America, but we have a lot of royal family stuff over here. And obviously, for years, there's been royal astrologers, so
yeah,
people love to do the forecast for the royals and see what's going to happen.
that's
It's of
right.
great interest. So
Yeah,
if ever you want to talk to people about the royal family and the royal, what's expected to happen, I'm sure there's lots of people that be interested in that, regardless of how interested you are in it. But
it's really a nice embedded tradition. So yeah, it's a lot of people, how it is with anybody that's interested in any kind of esoteric topic, there's always the people that are like, "Urgh," you must be a nut and
Well, this is
all of
true.
that.
People say the same thing about President Trump or the royal family or anything that's got a big following or huge people believe in it. A lot of other people are completely opposite. How on earth can you believe in that? So then when you combine
Right.
the royal family with astrology, you've lost 70% of people.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
that's for sure.
but
Yeah, because it's Uranian, and then the royal family is more Saturnian, of tradition and status quo and structure and all of that. And so
thinking
yeah.
about these coincidences and these synchronicities, shall we start with, have you had
Sure.
any dreams? Have you had any? I keep saying, should we
Oh,
start with? You've already started. You've answered half a dozen of them. But, as far as this list goes, can you remember anything about dreams that you've ever had in your life that feels strange?
yeah. I went through a period of time where I had a couple of super vivid dreams that were very unusual.
Go on. How old were you?
Uh, it was 2008. It was right around the time my Chiron return, which is 51, when you're 51. And I had my Chiron return in 2009. I started my astrology business at that time as well. I have Chiron in my professional house, my chart in Aquarius, which rules astrology. So, and it's aligned with my sun and my Mars as well,
So
Chiron.
when you looked at your chart and you saw that, did you think, oh, there's a sign that I'm supposed to be heading in that direction? Was it obvious to you from looking at your own chart?
Yeah, because the sign that's on the midheaven, which is the uppermost point, and the 10th house has to do with your place in the world and your calling and what your true profession is. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way you make money, but it's your calling. It's what matters to you, really. And it's really nice, of course, if you can combine the two, that's ideal. We can't always,
Not
but
always. Yeah.
everybody has that where it's like, I have to do this, I must do this. But Aquarius, each sign rules a gamut of things. There's a big range of possibility. And I was doing a lot of technical work. Teaching certainly fits with that, of doing something humanitarian. Aquarius is associated with that. Doing work that's of a healing nature and supportive nature with Chiron and in my professional house. I was already doing things that were kind of like that, but I was always interested in esoterica, and I did a lot of exploring, and I was a psychology major for a while, and a group of friends, and we just had fun doing all kinds of different things, drumming circles and doing isolation tanks and
All
just
the
having
big.
fun doing, experimenting. And so yeah, so the dream that I had was right around that time, 2008, 2009. I actually woke up and looked at the time because I was already studying astrology and really immersed in it. And so I knew, wow, that was a significant dream. It would be great to be able to draw up the chart. So it woke me up. I looked at the clock, noted the time, and then I went back to sleep. I didn't re-enter the dream, but I wanted to remember the time, and I did. And the next day I drew up a chart, and there were so many amazing coincidences, connections to my own chart, a number of them. For instance, the degree that was rising at the moment that the time when I had the dream was exactly the degree of my natal moon. So,
That's
and that
bizarre,
was,
isn't it?
and there were a number of other things I can't remember, but there were a number of really significant conjunctions with my
That's
chart, which are
amazing. Can you remember what the time was of the clock?
3 in the morning. Yeah, of
Was
that.
it 3 o'clock exactly?
When I woke up, it was 3 o'clock exactly. Yeah. Which is also Trinity, all of that, so it's like choop, choop, spirit, so significant number as well. Yeah.
And this is what I
Um,
was feeling when you were talking about the calling. It's a calling. It's like I feel it's a spiritual contract that you've got to do this work. And whether you choose that work to make money or not, that's your choice. And then, but some people find that they can't then do the work that they usually do to make money because it's no longer as rewarding as their spiritual contract. And so they sort of then start leaning into, oh, hold on, this is what I really am meant to be doing. And then somehow the money comes in from doing that other contract.
yeah. Exactly. And I really I know it's been it's a cliche now, Joseph Campbell's follow your bliss. I mean, it's really true. It's really follow what you love. Follow what is calling you. Don't be afraid to do that. And you get on this path, and that's the path of synchronicity. You start meeting people you're supposed to meet. You're in a place that you're supposed to be in. Unlike my experience of going to student teaching and being hit and my car stolen. I mean, they're both transportation problems, you see, accidents. So it's that other message of spirit hitting me over the head, with
I
this
know.
transport. You're
Yeah, but
going in the wrong direction,
you're going the
and
wrong way.
how
Yeah,
else can I get your attention, Elaine?
exactly.
How else? Literal,
Literally,
yeah. So both
physically, physically.
car, the car stolen from the parking lot of the school on a rainy night. It was just pouring rain. So it's like whoever wanted to steal that car was really motivated to get out in that dark, cold night.
From a
So, and they just got
parking
in the
lot,
car.
from a
So it was
parking outside a school. That's just the
the
lowest of
school
the low,
parking,
isn't it?
the school's parking
To
lot. Yeah.
steal a teacher's car. It reminds me of that film, Trains, Planes and Automobiles. Do you remember with Steve
Oh
Martin?
yeah. Yeah,
You're
that's
going the wrong way. And he's like, how do these know we're getting there on the wrong way on the motorway, literally driving the wrong way?
yeah,
Anyway,
that's a fun movie. I like that one. This dream had actually a hybrid creature in it. And Chiron, is hybrid. He's centaur.
what sort of
Um,
hybrid creature? What sort of
uh,
creature?
yeah, owl head, the head of an owl, and the body of a man, but man dressed in a tuxedo, kind of like James Bond, dressed up to go to a casino for the evening, kind of look, just, you know, really nice looking owl. So the
And
owl,
and
yeah,
owls swivel their head round, don't they? So they can see out the back of their head. They can see things
yes,
from all angles.
and in the dark, can see in the dark,
I know.
yeah, at
Oh,
night, and fly soundlessly. They have special
oh,
feathers so
oh.
that they can catch their prey, and they're not alerted. But this owl, I was hanging out, I was with my husband, we were in this clearing in the woods, and an owl flew in. There was the moonlight, full moon, we were just taking in the night. And the owl flew in, landed on the gable of the house that was next to where we were hanging out, and stood there for a while. We were watching the owl, and then the owl jumped up and then slowly drifted down. And as it drifted down, it changed into a hybrid creature, the owl man, because it was an actual owl at first. So it was transforming as it came down. And and then the owl was like, okay, I could feel really being drawn to the owl, like a tractor beam kind of thing. Like I got to go over here. This owl's pulling me. My husband was like, don't do that. That's dangerous. And I was like, I got to do this. So I got pulled to the owl, And then he started dancing me around, and I could feel his claws on my hand. So he had claws on instead of, but anyway.
Were
So
you
we're doing,
scared? How did you
yeah,
feel? How did it feel while you were dancing?
scared, a little
You're
scared,
scared.
but also a lot of exhilaration too. So it was scary but exciting, And so spinning around, we were dancing. He was dancing me around, and he started going faster and faster and faster. And then I started to panic. And he started dancing me towards this edge of this cliff, which I hadn't seen before. There it was, a cliff with a ravine far below. And then I got the impression that he was going to fling me off. And that's when I tried to get free, and I couldn't. And I finally did. And then I fell to the ground, and that's when I woke up.
And your husband warned you, and you didn't listen to your husband.
Yeah, right. But I was okay. I was okay. I had a great experience. But yeah, I know. But part of that, it's really interesting because I was really intrigued by that dream. And I've always been connected with owls a lot.
What, prior to that, prior to the dream?
Yeah, absolutely. I would see them a lot in the woods. I spent a lot of time in the woods in the I grew up in the eastern United States. I now live in the redwood forest, but the eastern woods are deciduous rather than conifer, largely. Very different forest. And there were woods behind our house, my childhood home. I spent a lot of time there. And so we would stay out, all of us kids would stay out, until we had to
Until you were
dinner.
hungry and you had to come home for food. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how it
exactly.
was. Yeah.
With dinner time, we would get in trouble if we didn't
Mm.
get home. Or we'd go back out, after dinner and play in the summer. And so I would often see the owls start to fly around in the woods. And so I had an early connection. I'm not afraid of them. I don't have a superstitious, dark association with owls. I consider them very positive. And we have them in our woods here
I
too.
think they're
And
beautiful,
so
aren't they?
I
They're
think they're
the
great. We
symbol of
have great,
wisdom. Wisdom, aren't they? Owls.
exactly. It's Athena's familiar is
Emblem. That's how I was feeling about that, as if it is your sort of spirit animal, your spirit guide. But then
right.
this dinner jacketed guy doesn't sound pleasant.
Well, it was so Bond-like.
Well, we'll forgive him then. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm
So
okay with Bond. Bond is
yeah,
okay with
Bond's
me.
good. Bond's good. Yeah.
Bond's fun. Bond's
You know.
fun.
Daniel
Big.
Craig.
The movie that he did with Judi Dench, I
Mm.
forget the name of it. I think that's the best Bond movie ever.
Skyfall, possibly. Skyfall.
Skyfall. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
on
that's
television here last night, I think, or the night before, which is a
interesting.
synchronicity.
That is,
Yeah.
yeah, my favorite Bond movie. Yeah, so that dream, and the thing about that dream was how vivid it was. It was so vivid. All the colors, like a movie playing in front of you, but you're in the movie. It's more like actually like living it,
Exactly. That's how it
experience.
feels, isn't it? It's not until you've had one of those dreams that you can really appreciate what that is, because it just feels like you've just done that. And you wake up
Right.
feeling like you've just done that.
Exactly. And I think later it came to be more and more representative of me um reconnecting with my own nature, my own, somewhat unusual, maybe outside of the box. I have
Risk
a lot
taking,
of,
risk taking. All that
and
smacked of risk taking to me. Unnecessary risk taking. Far too
yeah.
close to the edge. Husband warns you. Did it
And
anyway. Right. No,
exactly. And I am
no.
not, when people who know me, I am not someone that takes risks, especially physical ones. I'm very careful,
In
but I did
fairness,
try to get away. I
in
got away.
fairness,
That
you
was
got away,
good.
but in fairness, you didn't know the cliff was there.
No, the
So in
cliff
fairness,
appeared. Yeah. So it was like, wow, and it was, yeah, it was a really interesting experience, but I think it was integrating. It was integrating dream of reconnecting with an aspect of myself, that Mars nature. Too often with a, maybe less so nowadays when gender openness has made that better, perhaps. When I was growing up, it was very gender specific, and so there was still a lot of that, oh, you're a girl and therefore blah blah blah. And so all of my life I've been having to really kind of consciously connect with that Mars nature, which is your yang and your outgoing part of you, but it's also your night, the person, the part of you that can get out there and get things done that you want to do, that matter to you. And it's your outgoing energy to get out there and get things done, achieve things, um, you
For
know,
yourself, so that you can help other
yeah,
people.
assert
Because if
yourself
you
and all that.
because if you
And
grow for
realize,
yourself, you can help
yeah,
other people.
realize your potential,
That's it.
whatever that is for you personally, and
That's
to
true.
use that energy for your own self enough.
Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd flown off with the owl?
Yeah, well, the other thing that I did was I took a course soon after that on shamanic journeying with Michael Harner, he was the anthropologist that sort of started everything going in the early 80s. He went down, he studied the Jivaro tribe in South America, that the ayahuasca, which is very popular now. And he took the ayahuasca ceremony with the tribal elders and shamans. And so he directly experienced that and then became a shaman through his experience training with them, and then left anthropology to start this foundation for shamanic studies. And they do workshops everywhere. He passed away maybe 4 years ago now. But back in 2009, I took the class and I just lucked out, and he was one of the instructors.
No. Wow. Can't believe that you had him as your teacher. How did that come about then?
That has to do with that owl dream, because I was like, what was going on with this owl dream? I was interested in different sort of tribal healing and spiritual sort of avenues. And then I just came across his organization and saw that there was going to be this workshop in San Francisco. And I decided I was going to do it. And,
It's a
and then,
synchronicity. He just happened to be having a workshop as you were looking into it. See, that doesn't
yeah,
happen by accident.
right. And I'm just glad I did it when I did it, because pretty soon after he stopped being more actively a teacher. At that time, he was actually teaching quite a few of the classes. So, but it was really, and they're pretty, I think they're in the Bay Area, their organization. But anyway, so I went down and did it, and it was a 1 weekend thing, 2 days, and it just completely changed my life. It was just great. And I can give you the link to them for people who are interested. There's an
Yes,
awful
please.
lot of um less kind of subpar shamanic stuff going on that's
Oh,
really irresponsible in my opinion. And they're not like that. They're very serious, very scholarly, very responsible and respectful about it. They're the originals.
this
And
is
it's
it.
all non-drug, it's through drumming. I was going to tell you what happened during the workshop, which was interesting. So there was 80 of us in a big circle in just a convention room in a hotel in San Francisco. So you lay down and go through, there's someone that's drumming the whole time. And everybody's quiet. Everybody's doing their own thing. No talking, not that you would want to anyway. So right in the middle of this particular one, I start hearing people singing. And I thought, why are they singing? They're not supposed to be singing. They're not supposed to be making noise. And it's not in English. It's in some other, it sounded Scottish, Celtic or Irish Celtic, but I'm not sure, or Scandinavian or something like that. It sort of sounded like that. And I thought, that's weird, what, So we finished the process, and then people shared about what they experienced. And so someone said, wasn't it interesting? The singing, and a whole bunch of, not everybody, whole bunch of other people heard exactly the same thing. I was so flabbergasted by that. I was like, what? And so Harner said, oh yeah, we attract spirits all the time when we do these things, you know.
And isn't it
So
interesting that they use the singing, which is again like the vibration? So all the
yeah,
people on the
it
same
was,
vibration could hear that, and the ones that
and
weren't
it was
couldn't hear it.
beautiful. It was beautiful singing. I wish I had been able to recognize what language it was, but I'm pretty sure it was some kind of Scandinavian Celtic
I wonder if
language.
you all heard the same language.
Yeah, and I really wish I had gotten into a conversation with the other people that had heard it, because it would have been interesting. But it's just
That
remarkable. It was just such a great acknowledgement of, hey, there's so many mysteries to this world, just like your book is a great reminder for people.
Thank
And
you. Wouldn't it be great if
absolutely,
political leaders, when they sat down to argue about world affairs, they had to sit down with some Tibetan monks and do some visualization and vibrational harmonizing before they started?
that's right. Lift it up, and be reminded of,
Exactly. Of what's
the
the
higher.
unknown that we don't know. We don't know, do we?
That's right. We don't. And we need to have an open mind about all of this.
Okay.
Oh, one thing I wanted to say, there's an astrologer who was a Jungian astrologer who was one of my
I don't
mentors. She connected that she studied Jungian psychology, and then she was also an astrologer. And so connected the two because they have a lot of overlap and interconnection, There's so much of that. But I really liked what she wrote about synchronicity, and as it pertains to astrology too, which is, I mean, it really does.
interesting.
It's kind of like my being able to draw up that chart of that dream and see all of those astrological interconnections that were meaningful,
Exactly. It
and
didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen by accident.
right. And it's astrology describes the quality of that particular time and what was happening and the vibration at that time. And so if it's significantly vibrating your chart, then you're going to have unique experiences. And so
Exactly.
that,
It's like you're going to be activated. You're going
that's
to be
right.
activated.
And depending on what that is, what gets stirred up in the chart, So she called synchronistic experiences Sophia's wink, like, Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, Sophia.
Lovely. Yeah.
And I like that. I think that's neat. It's a wink about, hey, pay attention, or there's a lot of mystery here and enjoy it, and don't be afraid and play with it. It's playful and fun and beautiful,
And also
And
very powerful. It's very, very powerful because you're linking up with powerful forces which are more powerful than us as individuals.
that's right. And just as dreams are symbolic, the
Mm,
language of dreams is symbolism. They're
mm.
pictures, they're the symbol, which means it represents something. And these synchronistic experiences are often symbolic. And it is about remembering that there is this other dimension, and for us to pay attention to this aspect of life that is symbolic, that spirit is always talking to us, or the force, or whatever, God, whatever we want to consider that it is. And so, and one of the things that Alice O'Howell, she wrote something, I thought, if you don't
Okay.
mind, I'd like to, it's very brief, but I
Okay.
think it speaks to the point really
And
well. And she
also,
said,
because her name is Alice, it's synchronistic for me because the name Alice is significant in my book. So I love the fact that she's called Alice.
oh, yeah, yeah. And I'll send you the link to her.
Thank
She passed away, but her website is still up, and she has books published. They're awesome.
Okay.
They're really good.
Mm.
So she considered them sacraments,
Okay.
synchronicity
Mm.
experiences, in that a sacrament, its meaning of a thing of mysterious and sacred significance that happens. And I think that's a really neat way to think about these weird experiences that happen, that they're sacraments, that it's a mysterious and sacred thing. And we're stepping into this sort of place where we're open to this, where this is happening, an intersection, you know. And she said, to me, a sacrament is an outward and visible sign of an invisible spiritual meaning. Uniting the two is the function of living a symbolic life. The true meaning of symbolis in Greek is putting things together, and its antonym is diabolis.
Okay.
This literally means separating. The function attributed to the devil, which separates the radius of Sophia's wisdom, connecting the ego at the circumference and that mysterious center, which is self, you know,
Wow.
together rather than separating, and it's this, not that, you know. And it's the connecting of the physical self, our physical life, the mundane life, with the spiritual life, with the transcendent. And there's an intersection, I think, that happens. We're stepping into this, we're stepping through the veil, you know.
Now, my
It
thing
seems
is,
to me.
it's totally is. And all those words are so beautiful to hear. And in the back of my mind over here, I'm feeling as though I know there are some times when I've experienced that where it feels like a religious out of body experience. And sometimes I've had things which are so funny because you're not supposed to laugh at funerals, you know, it's like that. It feels like, oh, this thing is really funny, what's happening over here. And so it's very light-hearted, and it couldn't in any way be seen to be religious, but it's so synchronistic as to you can't ignore it. You know, so there's a sort of light-hearted aspect of it as well as
Right.
the deeper side. For instance, let me give you a for instance. When in my life, I love life, absolutely love everything about life. You know, I really love it. So when I am out and about and I'm walking along, and I'm very fortunate to live near the seafront, I walk along the seafront every morning. And on a Saturday, I forget, there's a fun run. There's a fun run often. People run for charity, right? On the seafront. It happens regularly every summer. People get in their neon coloured outfits. They look like a scene out of a film from the 80s, right? And they run and they run and they raise money for charity, and everyone claps, and it's all great. Anyway, yesterday I thought, right, I'll walk along the seafront and I'll just have some little fresh air before I start work. I'll have a nice sea breeze and clear my head. And it was a bit cold in the UK at the moment, a bit cold in England. It's not very pleasant. So I thought, oh, I'll cross over and go back now. I sort of, you know, I've done half my steps I'm supposed to do. I'll just go home now. So I stepped out into this pathway where normally runners do run. And this woman in front of me literally reached out to me. She reached out like that with her. I had my headphones in. She reached out with her arm to get me out of the path. And I looked at her and she pointed. And I turned round and there was a whole wall of people behind me running towards me. I was about 50 yards away from a half marathon. There were thousands of people and I was standing in their path. So I was walking this way and they were running behind me. And it was like a wall of people in neon. I was like, oh my God. So I quickly got off the path. But I literally was in that position where I could see a straight line of people and they were shoulder to shoulder. It was the starting line, you know, it wasn't the end where you could just dip in between the people. If I'd stayed there, I would have been run over, or I would have had to start running to keep up, you know, it was like that. So I'm thinking, now that is exactly, it's funny. Anybody watching, they were laughing. Some of them were not laughing because I was in the way. But it's that symbolism. It's like, what does this mean? You know, I could interpret that and love it. And I did love it. But the fact that this woman reached out to me, literally, and that's something that annoys people when you write in your email, I'm just reaching out because, and it reminded me literally. And then there's a wall of people running towards me that I didn't realize. It's like almost like I've got all this support behind me that I can't see. And I feel that is like spirit. You've got
Oh
people,
yeah, yeah,
you've got a lot
very good.
of support that you can't see, right? And it was
Right.
that, but that is like, is that sacred? It's like the logical mind says, no, there's nothing sacred about that. But if all synchronicity and interpretations of events in life, then it is sacred.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's, I think the more we pay attention to it, we don't miss these things. And it's
Or,
really,
or dismiss it. It's
it's
nothing.
it enriches life. We don't know what they are, why they happen, and that's part of the mystery and the fun. And but they do happen, and they happen to all of us, and everybody has that, these odd experiences that are inexplainable. And
And I'd like to
it's
know if anyone out there has ever stepped out in front of a load of marathon runners, let me know because I want to know if it's happened to anyone else.
well, I have not.
You have not, no, because you're not that stupid, no. And it's that, isn't it? Because I find when people ask me for directions, I see that as I'm the person that knows the way. So that I love
Yeah,
that. But now,
yeah, I thought I liked that in your book that you shared that.
yeah,
Yeah.
or people ask you to take a selfie. They say, can you take they give you an expensive camera and they say, can you take my picture? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Does that happen
trustworthy.
to you? Exactly. I must be a person that they think I can take a
Yeah,
photo. They haven't seen my
that's
skills.
right. Not gonna run the camera. Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, it's really, that is the part of paying attention to the symbolic nature of life, which is always happening. It's always happening, and we often miss it because we're not watching, you
Or
know.
giving it any meaning, recognizing when you're walking your dog, when you see the same person walking towards you hasn't got a dog, and that person's paying attention to your dog. Are you having a conversation with that person? Because
Yeah.
they haven't got a dog, but why haven't they got a dog? And they might like your dog, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the other thing about that when we're drawn to people or we connect with people is astrology. You look at the connections between the chart and you can see there are strong resonances. And the people that don't stick in our lives, well, we don't have the same,
No,
connections. And so there's a reason why there's not that strong, you know, pull.
no. And I think sometimes
And it
you
describes it really well.
you do
It
grow
really
out of
does.
people. So you do grow out of people, don't you, as well? Sometimes you're
Yeah.
there to teach each other something and then you move away.
That's right. And some of that can be accounted for with the progress charts as we shift. And it's like a planned unfolding of our chart. And it's taking the birth chart and moving it forward in time. And that accounts for these different phases of our life. And, especially the progressed sun, you can really see the difference in terms of the kind of people that you attract, because you tend to attract the experiences and the people even that have that particular sign really strong in their charts in one way. And experiences that relate, that pertain more to the element of the sign as well as what the sign itself represents. And then you're developing that within yourself. It's like a scheduled, okay, now I'm going to work on my Capricorn, developing the Capricorn aspect of myself. And my sun sign just progressed sun just moved into Aquarius, which is the sign that rules astrology. So, and I will have a new moon. You have a progressed new moon too, and it's also another 30-year cycle that begins. And I have one starting up soon in Aquarius. My last one that's
Exciting, isn't it?
finishing was in Capricorn.
So
So there's all
exciting.
these really interesting cycles to look into. There's so much in astrology to
But
cover that goes
people
beyond the just the chart.
But people are
And
always asking you questions. People are always asking you for the way, literally, but as well as people ask me the way literally, and they ask you the way in life. So do you
yeah, as
find,
an
have you
astrologer.
noticed? Yeah, have
Yeah.
you noticed in your life, do people ask you the way? Do you ever get asked for directions?
When I haven't traveled much, but my husband and I went to Europe for back in the 90s.
Ooh.
And we were in Paris and I was walking around. I went
Sorry, what
to
year? What year were you in Paris?
1995,
Okay.
1995, September, October,
Okay.
1995.
I was there in
And so,
96 because Euro
uh,
Disney opened. Was it 95? No, actually might have been earlier than that. I have to look
yeah.
into that just to make sure we weren't there in the same year. So you went to Paris.
So I was just walking. I went to the Rodin Museum and
Mm.
my husband had gone there before when he
Okay.
was last in Paris and he didn't want to go again. So I went by myself. And as I was walking back, he sounded American and he was panicked. And he came up to me and he said, "Do you speak English?" You know? So, but I forget what it was, but he was looking for something. He was lost.
And he
And
was American,
I
and
couldn't
he
help
found an
him.
American. But he found an American. What are the chances of him finding a fellow American who understood his American, desperate
Yeah.
American, and recognized his panic?
Yeah. So anyway, but I wasn't able to help him, unfortunately, but that was
Exactly.
a more dramatic example of,
Exactly. But it's you, this is the whole process you go through. People ask you the way to places that you don't know and you can't help them. But it's just the
yeah,
fact that you're a calming influence. Sometimes
right.
can help
I was
them
in a
find someone who
play,
can.
I
Yeah.
was, yeah,
You can help calm
yeah.
him down with your energy.
Right. And yeah, I think that's a neat way. I'd never thought of that before until reading your book, that when people ask you that question, and that's an example of paying attention to the symbolic dimension of the things, mundane things that happen to us. And so that enriches life, it's much more fun too,
This is
it's
another
much
human
fun
being,
and rich.
a whole
Yeah,
human being that's got the God essence and spirit flowing through them. And they may or may not be aware of that. And they're coming to you and asking you for your help in such a small way, you know. So, how
right.
can you not really value that as an experience? Like you've been given, it's a privileged position to be in for somebody to be asking for your help. And for
Yes,
you to be
that's
able to help, it's you serving, you know. So you've been trusted by the universe or the higher self that you're going to know what to do in this situation. Otherwise, you wouldn't
right.
be in that situation.
Yeah, and even if you don't have the answer, that connecting with another human being when you're in a panic can, bring the panic down, just being with someone who isn't panicked, and just like, okay, you'll find out where it
Yeah,
is.
or I can
Um,
help I can help find you someone who can because
yeah, or
I
you
can speak a little bit of
I would
French.
go in the shop. I think I probably said, just go in one of the shops and ask, and they'll probably be able to tell you.
Yeah,
But it was, so panicked. You know how you get panicked and you can't think straight. He
yeah,
was
and you
kind
don't
of,
know what your name is. Yeah, and someone says, which I don't know. Where would you live? I don't know.
yeah. And sometimes it can be fun to be lost.
Oh no,
Yeah, sometimes it's
no.
actually best.
Well, I have
Yeah.
had this experience of a person who always used to take the long way, and then he would find himself helping someone on that long way. So
Oh
it wasn't
yeah,
the wrong way or the long way. It was where he was meant to be able to
right
help someone
way.
else. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like that
yeah,
wizard says, what time are you supposed to arrive? A wizard always arrives exactly when they're meant to.
yes, exactly the right time.
Mm. Now, any of these other questions that I sent you, have you ever been saved or rescued by a person who just happened to turn up? Have you ever found yourself in really dire circumstances?
Uh, no, I thought about that, and I don't have any experiences like that, but I do have a little minor one where
Oh,
I rescued somebody else,
lovely.
and it was a neighbor of mine,
Mm.
and Tibetan monk neighbor who lived here for a while, who was just lovely and wonderful. And he was up cleaning the gutters on the second story of his house. And I didn't know that. I was in my house, he's two doors down, and there, we have everybody has a little bit of land here. And so there's a bit of space. So, it's not like I could hear him or anything. And so, but all of a sudden he popped into my mind, just popped into my mind. And I thought, huh, that's funny. And so I thought, well, I'll just go and see how he's doing. So he was stuck, his ladder fell. He was stuck up on his roof, and he said, I was really trying to get somebody to help me. I was really sending that out there. And there's, even if he yelled, the neighbors are in their houses or gone or something, and it would be hard to hear. And I was inside and I didn't hear anything. It was a strong intuition, and I picked up the signal. And so anyway, so I was able to help him. So
That's
that was,
unbelievable. That's
yeah,
telepathy. That's intentional message
yeah,
sending to him, and you weren't
yeah,
even trying to pick it up, and you picked it up. See, we don't even
yeah,
know enough about thoughts, do we, to be able to say, well, it's not possible. It is
yeah,
possible. You just did it. My God, he was
yeah,
lucky you were in. He was lucky
yeah,
you were in.
yeah, yeah. It
Wow,
was
that's
fun having
amazing.
him up here when he was here. It was a
Okay,
short time, but it was great.
that's amazing. So,
yeah, but that's the only thing I can say about that particular question.
so thinking about the paranormal experience that you had with your husband that you mentioned at the beginning, do you remember you said that you had a paranormal experience? What was
Oh,
that?
yeah. Yeah, I did. This is a very dramatic thing that happened. My husband, the year that we met, we dated for a while and he just did not like Southern California,
Hmm.
and needed to get out. And so he had an opportunity to live in Yosemite, which is a beautiful national park here in California up in the Sierras. So he went and moved away. And my father was elderly, and I had a very strong intuition that he was going to pass away. And he did. He died at the end of the year. So I didn't want to leave. So I stayed behind and it was like, okay, well, we'll see what happens with this relationship. And then, so I went and visited him over the summer and we had fun. And it was the first time I actually had gone to Yosemite. And it was just, that's one of the most remarkable places on earth. It really is so profound and meaningful. The landscape just grabs you, it's so
Mm.
touching, beautiful, majestic. So that was fun. And so then I came back, and about a month later, um, I I woke up suddenly in the middle of the night, and there was a being standing in over me. And it just was like a shadowy figure, looked like energy, you know and it was leaning over me. And so I woke up with that. I guess it woke me up. And I went, hey, just my half awake sort of reaction. And it jumped back and laughed. And it was my husband's laugh. And I thought, oh, wow. And, so then I just sort of like, okay, that was interesting. The next night, I got a call from a ranger in Yosemite that he was missing, that he had gone on a hike and has disappeared. And so I thought, oh my God, he died. He must have died if he's missing. He went on a hike. And so he was gone. They found him eventually. He had gone on a hike. He had fallen and broken his wrist and ankle. And this was in October up in the high elevations of the Sierra. So it was very cold at night. He survived the search and rescue. There were teams looking for him everywhere. He couldn't get up and stand up because he had a broken ankle from the fall. He fell 70 feet from this trail that he was going on, and got separated from his pack and then couldn't get his bearings because he couldn't stand up. And then he had a broken wrist as well. So he survived for days out there. I went up with his parents and we stayed while they were looking for him. And eventually I came home because I thought, you know, he's not alive. And I had that experience. So I thought it was his spirit saying goodbye. But then they found him the next day and he had serious frostbite. And he is a double amputee below both of his knees, but he walks like a normal person. People often don't even realize
From
that
that
he's
experience. Oh,
yeah, and he does everything. He's off on a hike with our dog right now down the hill, which is
at
pretty
70
rugged,
feet,
steep.
falling 70 feet, he should probably
70
be
feet.
dead. He should be dead, right?
And
Should have
not only
died,
that,
shouldn't he?
fall didn't kill you, being out and
In the
exposed to the
cold.
very cold night. So, and he would have been fine if he hadn't gotten the frostbite. He would have survived completely. It would have just been a couple of broken bones, but so that was my experience with my husband, and so he was in the hospital, and he said that night. So I told him, when I saw him again, I said, I had this really crazy experience, and he said, oh, I was really thinking about you that night, and realizing how important you were to me, and so,
So that sort
yeah,
of gave him a reason to stay alive, knowing that your
yeah,
connection. It gave him a reason to not just fall asleep and give up. Because days, that
that's
must have
right.
been.
And that's exactly what he said, that there was a reason, you know, and not just me, but life itself, how precious life was. And he was sad, you know, it's like facing his possible demise, you know. But it was the juvenile delinquents that had been trained for search and rescue, the kids that had done crimes, and as a rehabilitation, they trained them to do search and rescue. They're the ones that found him. So, and so it's neat,
What
a
an
neat part of the story.
experience. Yeah, what an
Yeah,
experience
it
for
was
all of
quite.
them.
And then a month after he was in the hospital for about a month with his surgeries, came home, and then a month later, my father died. So it was like crazy. And then a month after that, I moved in with them. So we decided to move in and we got engaged. And so lots of drama. But the paranormal experience was seeing him and knowing that was him, you know, I mean, it was his laugh, you know, for sure.
No
You know.
mistaking him. Wow. So you're connected on a soul level. That's the thing. And you've had proof shown to you that he has got a soul and so have you, and you're connected. And the
Right,
physical
exactly.
thing that you're just carrying, this vessel that you're just experiencing life in.
Right, because that was no normal experience for him. He was out there confronting his death, you
See,
know,
it's a
and then,
one, yeah.
you know, you know, I've had enough experiences in my life to really, and the shamanic journeying really is an example of that, of really being connected to that spiritual side of us that we all have. And that's a whole other dimension of richness and meaning in our lives that we need to reconnect with. And it's missing too much in this world. And so your book is a really great reminder of that for people.
Thank
And
you.
it's fun.
I so love the
I
way you keep
out
talking about my
you
book. It's great.
because your book is fun. And I like you have a very nice, friendly conversational tone to your writing that's very warm and fun to read.
Thank
And your stories are really interesting and compelling, and it's well done. So,
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elaine.
and it's
So,
such a great topic. It's a really, really fascinating and wonderful topic.
well, this is it. It's bringing the synchronicity from Carl Jung into 2024, isn't it? And recognizing, well, what does happen around us now? What can we consider coincidences? Where does synchronicity show up? And because think about it, in the 50s or 60s, when there were no mobile phones, and it would be easier to think to yourself, oh, I wonder how Auntie Betty is. And then the phone would ring and then it'd be Auntie Betty. Whereas now
Right.
we don't use that. We just don't use it because we don't need to, because we've got the mobile phone. So everything is instant. So I think that is one of the reasons why we're losing that connection, because we don't need to use it anymore.
Yeah, and there is something about the busyness and the buzziness of our life that is interfering with the signal, because you do have to be present. You have to be present, and your being has to be present to pick up on this. You have to be where you are. And so much of us aren't, you know, we're off out here or even further, you know, out in our consciousness. So we're not where we are at all. And that's where life is. And that's where the intersection occurs, is when we're present, you know. And we know that those are the moments we tend to remember too. You know, those odd moments that stuck in memory where nothing is happening really, you know, those memories that keep coming back. And it's like, why do I remember that? There was nothing really going on. Well, I think it's because you were actually really present. You were being, you were being in the now, you know, you were in that dimension. And so it's significant. It was a significant aliveness that
You can
sticks with you.
switch on, and you can do it on purpose. So you can, I say to yourself,
Absolutely.
okay, I'm going to
Absolutely.
take out a packet of tissues today, and then I'm going to find somebody that needs these. And then you will find someone out there that's crying, or they've got something in their eye, or they need something to wipe off their clothes. There will be someone. And just try it for yourself. Try and see what happens.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because that's very similar to journeying with a purpose. You know, you're
Mhm.
journeying with a purpose. You're taking that intention and saying, I'm going to do this. And it's fun. It's a fun thing to do too. And it's a fun little experiment with spirit, you know, to see what
Exactly.
happens with
Exactly.
that.
What does it feel like to be directed, to be guided, to take the right road, to be able to help someone? What does that feel like to you? So next time you have to make a big decision in your life, you can tap into that. Does this feel right to me? Because you recognize it, because you've used it before. Because a lot of people, if they've never used that hunch, when they do have to come to a crossroads in their life, they have trouble deciding which road to take because they're not relying on their inner self to say which is the right way for me.
Exactly. And that is, if I have learned anything worthy of learning and worthwhile in my life, it is paying attention to that and not ignoring it or neglecting to take it in. Because I've always made, that's when the missteps happen. That's when the bad decisions happen, is when you're not paying attention to that gut, like, and it's small things. It's like not going to a party, not wanting to go to a party, even though it's like, oh, I probably should, or I don't want to hurt their feelings. And you get pulled into it, and it's like, oh, it's miserable, one thing or another. It's not, and it's like, I should have just stayed
You know,
home,
I
or you
shouldn't
get
have gone.
sick,
Yeah,
or something, so it's important to do that and give yourself the flexibility, because there's a reason. There's a
definitely.
reason why.
And also, I
Small
notice
charge.
it's definitely, it's I notice you've got your hair long. I've noticed a lot of people that are spiritual like to have long hair because it
Oh
is,
yeah.
I was reading the other day that it's a throwback to picking up things in the environment that are sensing danger or something. So it's a
Oh,
natural
I
way
didn't
of
know.
alert system to your nervous system, apparently. It's like
Huh.
an extension of your nervous system, apparently.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Oh,
It's our
oh.
antenna. I I know, graying antenna.
Well, this is it, but it's proof of wisdom, the grey, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is.
Well,
Yeah.
Elaine, it's been lovely to speak with you. Are there
Yeah.
any other
Enjoyed it
stories that
very
we haven't spoken about? Is there anything else that you feel that I've missed?
um no, I think we touched on, the
Everything.
most important, yeah, the big things. I mean, there's some other things, and if you ever want to do this again, and
Love
I'm
to. Oh, I'd absolutely love to. Oh my goodness,
pick
Elaine, I
up
would
on
love
other
to.
things. Yeah,
I
that
would
would be
love
fun.
to.
I enjoyed talking to you a lot. It was really
Thank
fun.
you. And it's been
Thank
amazing.
you.
And I
Thank
think,
you.
and people watching are going to have questions for you, and they can send the questions to me, and then I'll send the questions to you, and that's fine, isn't
Okay.
it? Yeah,
Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
brilliant.
absolutely.
It's been wonderful. Let me press the stop button on the recording.